Good morning. You're listening to WPVM FM in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on the dial. This is the BLAINESWORLD Show, ordinarily heard Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and you can also now watch it on WPVM's Facebook page, and that's what you're watching now, in this special Facebook Live edition of the BLAINESWORLD Show. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce three guests from a current show at NC Stage, and they are TJ Lancaster, and it's Conor, I'll get the last name, Conor Patrick Donahue, and also Candace Taylor. And welcome aboard, guys. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you, Blaine.
Okay, and what I typically do is, since I haven't met any of the three of you, I think Candace I may have seen on stage or seen you direct something, but the first question I always wonder about is in terms of how you got into theater. I'll start maybe with TJ. And the question, TJ, you grew up where as a kid?
I grew up in Houston, Texas, and the big professional theater there, the Alley Theater, used to do murder mystery kind of genre shows in the summer, and that's what I fell in love with. I loved the genre. I loved being in a theater and being scared all together with 500 other people, and pursued that through college in San Antonio, and then took a little detour in my 30s and went into the real world and tried to fill the coffers a little bit more, and then in my 40s returned back to performing full time, and I live in Kansas City, Missouri now, and I work there and throughout the Midwest, and a little bit here in the Southeast, in West Virginia, and now for the first time here at NC Stage, which has been an awesome experience.
As a kid, when you grew up, did you know you wanted to be an actor?
I knew I was loud. And I knew that I loved storytelling, either both as an audience member and as a storyteller myself. So I knew that it would be part of my life in some way. I think if I weren't performing, I would be probably a lifelong consumer of great stories and great theater.
As a kid, do you remember, not necessarily as a kid, but do you remember your first play you were ever in?
The first thing I was ever in was called Mrs. McThing in middle school. Okay. And I remember nothing about it except I think I played a chef. And I think the director at one point said, everyone could be louder except for TJ, you're fine.
Now, here's an idea I want to share with you, TJ, for both when you go home, and Conor, you can have it. And Candace, I want you to keep this one in mind. But I have a great idea for a fundraiser. I want everybody to do their very first role, okay? Like, for example, the one you mentioned, middle school. Do they have a videotape of that somewhere?
Oh, I think it was before the invention of videotape.
But wouldn't that be fun, that to pass on to other people to see it so we could revisit that middle school role? Conor, I'll ask you the same thing, too. As a kid, were you into acting?
So I started acting when I was 12 years old. I was a very, very shy and very quiet kid. Didn't talk to anyone outside of rec fam. And my first role was title Sneakers, was the character name, in an adaptation of As You Like It, called As You Dig It, which was at Lumina Studio Theater, Silver Spring.
By the way, we're having a little technical difficulty with your tape. We'll try to go with that as long as we can. But same thing too, that first role you were in, do they have a videotape of that somewhere?
I'm pretty sure that they have one recording somewhere in the archive of Lumina Studio Theater.
Okay. But I'd just love to see you. Wouldn't it be fun to do that again? Just to see it again to all your fans and friends and family, whatever. So you started acting then as a 12-year-old, and you kept in the profession since then?
Yeah, I tried to get away from it for 1 year. I decided I wanted to be a farmer instead, made a huge pivot. And that tanked after 1 year. And I became a theater major when I started thinking I was going to go into farming. and found out that I needed to take chemistry to do that. That happened.
Okay. And I think we're close to, we may have to kind of put you on pause a little bit here because we're losing part of what you're saying. But I'll ask you one other question. I saw it before, you had a guitar with you, or you're a musician also?
Yes, I play bass, not professional. I used to be in a band. Who wasn't? But I still like to play bass.
Okay. And by the way, I just mentioned to our viewers, we're speaking with Conor Patrick Donahue, but we may be having some technical difficulties, Conor, so I may have to cut this in just a little bit. But I'll turn to Candace next. So Candace, I guess I've known you as a director. You also are an actor as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have a preference?
Oh, I'm going to say yes. I prefer to act, but I'm going to take any opportunities I can doing whatever, if they wanted me to design lights, I'd try that out.
Because I have to give you a compliment here. You're one of the few directors I've spoken to who actually says they prefer acting over directing. Most directors, and Candace, come clean with us, and you're the exception. But the reality is, when you direct, you don't have to memorize lines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Sometimes you can't help it, though.
To
Find
memorize
myself
lines?
saying some of the lines. Yeah, learn the lines of the actors in the show,
Well, I've also seen this. Have you ever had to do this, Candace? Have you ever had to have a play start and then somebody drops out and you've had to also jump into being a performer?
Yes, you have actually described my career. I call myself a seat filler. I'm the one they call when somebody drops out. That's me.
Okay, so you've done that as well. Same question I asked the guys. Do you remember your first role as an actor you ever were in?
I absolutely do. I was 7 years old, and I was one of the children in a production of The King and I in German at the Munich Opera House.
Wow, very exciting.
I was paid for my first role.
And so you know German then, too?
Not at all. I don't remember any of the songs. I know 9. And
So
I
then
can say no.
So after the 7-year-old debut, did you pursue acting for the most part before you got into directing?
Absolutely, never stopped.
Okay, and what got you into directing? What
led me to directing really was teaching. I decided to start teaching full time, and part of the teaching was directing. And so I started out at I went to, my alma mater is Northwestern University, and I worked at a summer program there for several years and with high school students. And I adapted and directed, because they had to do shows that were an hour long. So I adapted and directed several Shakespeare plays to an hour. And that's how I started. And I tell people, I never took this is true, I never took a directing class, but I learned to direct because I was an actor who got very small parts in a lot of shows, and I didn't smoke. So when breaks happened, when I wasn't on stage, I stayed in the room and I watched directors.
Now, are you also a teacher too?
Yes, I teach at Warren Wilson College.
Okay, in theater?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'll ask Conor the same question, TJ, as well. So you're an acting background. Did you ever want to direct? Do you ever have an interest in directing?
I'll go first. I did direct a little bit when I was in an undergrad, and I liked it, but I think there are other people who are more temperamentally suited to it, who can kind of look at the big picture. When I was working as a director, I think I was approaching it too much as an actor, and I don't think I was focused on the big picture enough. I don't think I had that kind of distance to look from 350 feet up and look at the big picture. So I have dabbled in it, but that is not my career path.
Same question, Conor. Any interest in ever directing?
So I have taken directing classes before in DC at the Studio Acting Conservatory. And I loved the classes. but I similarly would say that I'd prefer acting over directing personally. I loved being able to see, all the different styles of directors when I was there, and it was an interesting challenge, but definitely feel better and know my place better in pursuing one role as opposed to looking to, shaping the entire cadence of the whole show.
And you mentioned something interesting, which I've seen at NC Stage, other North Carolina theaters. You mentioned one role. Have you ever had a play you were in, though, they had to do multiple roles, like more than one at a time? What's the most roles you ever had to do? A bunch?
I was just talking with Charlie, who's the artistic director
Right.
at NC Stage, about a play called Greater Tuna that both
Right.
of us have done. It's
You-
a series
you-
of plays.
You did
And-
Greater Tuna?
Yeah, both of us did, not together, but both of us throughout our career have done it. And in any one of the tuna plays, there's probably 15 to 20 roles each of the actors plays. And I love that. I want to say either Candace or Conor has experience with a show called 39 Steps.
Right.
Don't one of
I've
you?
seen it, yeah.
Okay, that's another one I've never had the chance to do. I've gotten close a bunch of times, but I've never gotten to do it. That has two actors who play a multitude of roles.
Were you in 39 Steps, Connor?
I wasn't. Similarly to TJ, I've auditioned for it a couple of.
Well,
I'm right for.
Next year, let's do it.
Yeah, we're both gonna.
well, it feels like you've been in it as well. And Ken, the same thing too. Were you ever in a thing where you had to do more than one role?
In graduate school, we did a production of Peer Gynt, and I counted because it was. I'm not a person who likes to change their clothes a lot, and I had 6 roles and 9 costume changes.
Okay. Well, like you said, TJ, I'd love to see you someday in any of the tuna shows, but tuna is just amazing. And the guy we're talking to, Charlie, is the best at it. I've seen him several times. Candace, have you ever seen him do a multiple role thing?
Oh, yeah.
And he is so good at that. And with another guy, local guy, Scott Treadway, the two of them are just incredible. So someday you'll have to see Charlie in that as well. So let's go from there now. We're now into 2022. NC Stage now is back open, and you're doing this play. I love the title of it, and I'll kind of ask Candace maybe to talk a little bit about the lifespan of Lifespan of a Fact? Is that the name of it?
Yes.
And for the benefit of people who don't know it, can you give kind of maybe the Reader's Digest version of what the show is all about?
I'll do my best. It's based on a true story where a writer was asked to write a piece for a magazine. And in writing it, he wrote this lovely piece about a young man who committed suicide in Las Vegas. And he was working on comparing that suicide to how Vegas is now. And when he submitted the article or the essay, the fact checker started checking almost every fact and found that that he had, let's say, fudged several of the details. Some of them seemed benign, like what color bricks were in a certain place, and others of them, for instance, on the day that the young man who he was writing about committed suicide, a young woman also committed suicide by jumping off a building, and he changed that to that she hung herself. And those kinds of things start to get him in trouble for whether or not he's telling the truth about anything. So this play, that article, that story turned into a book, also called The Lifespan of a Fact, and then later into a play. And this play, while not the complete exact story, the exact truth of that story, sets up the debate, the interesting debate of what's more important, the actual truth, the authentic truth, or the truth that moves you, the truth that gets at the heart of what you were trying to get across to your audience. And sometimes, as they say, poetic license. You take poetic license in order to reach somebody in a better way than what the fact might say. And so what I love most about this play is I love debate plays, first of all. I love plays that set up an argument. And the best thing about this play is it doesn't answer it. It leaves it open so that the audience has a chance to hear both sides and decide for themselves.
You had mentioned that there are some comic aspects of it in the
Oh,
play
definitely.
as well. Because I'm listening to this, and it doesn't sound like a comedy,
Yes, it doesn't sound like that when you describe the details of the story, but I don't want to ruin any of the jokes for anybody who might go see the play between now and May 15th. But I do think there are lots of laughs in it, and that is a way in for the audience to feel comfortable, get to know the characters a little bit more. It shows a little bit of who the characters are, and then there's a lot of wordplay, the comic wordplay. I really don't want to give away.
Well, let me ask the two guys, and now I'm curious as to, and another of my favorite local actors is in the play as well, Jennifer Gotti, is it? A very talented actor. But let me ask the two guys, so TJ, your role in the show is what?
I play John DeGatta, who is the author of this essay that is being fact-checked, who's a real person. He is a writer and a professor of nonfiction. And he has written this piece. And when you talk about, it sounds like a very serious setup, and it is, but the bulk of the play is really kind of an odd couple clash of this idealistic, almost obsessive compulsive fact checker and someone who won't be moved in the author of saying, hey, what I wrote is truth. You can quibble with details, but the actual thing itself is true, is emotionally true. So it's very much an odd couple, yin and yang kind of back and forth between these two characters.
Who is the fact checker?
That would be Conor.
Oh, Conor. I was going to guess Jennifer. So Conor, talk about being a fact checker. So what was your reaction to having that particular part?
It's interesting. I feel a lot more kinship personally to John DeGatta and his side of the argument of emotional truth being as important, if not more important, than the absolute 100% factual truth. I think that, moving pieces are important. And in our talk back, I brought up Orson Welles, who is a nonfiction writer / fiction writer, who, in War of the Worlds, presenting that to the world as fact. People were shocked and scared, but it was a powerful statement, so I personally think that it's that's my view of the two of them. But being the fact checker is like a huge departure from who I am as a person. I'm pretty scatterbrained and less detail oriented.
So you mean after farming, we're not going to have you become a fact checker? not your next career?
Yeah, of being a farmer and an actor, I think fact checking is not really in my future.
You kind of anticipated my next question, though, and I was thinking as TJ was talking, if ever a show lent itself or Candace to a talkback, this would be the show for it. I've seen some great talkbacks. I've seen some terrible ones. All of us have done that as well. Do you have a talkback every time, or just you had one time?
We had one the first week we started performances, and I think this coming Friday, Right now, as we record this, it's May 1st. So whatever the next Friday is, I think is another talk back. But one of the great things I think about this play, and I've said this to friends who have asked about it, is I imagine that the coffee dates after this play, when people leave the theater and go get a cup of coffee, those conversations have got to be amazing, because at different times you side very much with Conor's character of, no, if you say that the bricks were red, the bricks need to be red. And at other times you side with the author, my character. And Jen Gotti plays the editor in this piece, and she is very much the referee between these two. And so she kind of moves behind, no, what you're saying is valid, no, what you've done is over the line and is untrue. So I think it's a great show to talk about after the fact. And I think it would be fun to be a fly on the wall in downtown Asheville as people get coffee after seeing this show.
Because just as you're talking about it, I want to, now you convinced me, I have to get to it, because I really want to see it. And I'll ask you, Candace, I know different directors have different opinions. How do you feel about talkbacks in general? Do you like them? Some people love them, some people hate them.
I tolerate them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
as an actor, and it's a little bit easier for me as a director to do a talkback, because I feel that what they were saying earlier, I have a broader point of view from which to speak when I've directed something. As an actor, I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine recently, and I said, my nature, I shouldn't have been an actor by my nature. I already told you I don't like to change clothes. And I'm not a person who wants to be out front. I used to say I want to be an actor like people are a plumber. I want to go to work and have my work be acting. And I'm not much for the spotlight and the things where people look at you, or assume things about you because of who you played on stage. And so those kind of things make me very nervous.
Well, it's funny because TJ had an interesting point about going for coffee, and some Mehmet, I just read about it, don't want their players talk about it at all. They even have to say you can't talk about it. They don't want to talk back. They don't want anybody to leave the theater talking about it, which is kind of an interesting approach. But I've heard other people have that as well. It's you experience it. You don't want to have to discuss it or share your opinion with other people. But I think it's fun to talk about shows.
That's why I say I tolerate them, because they, like I said, they make me nervous. But I know that people enjoy them, and so that's why I do them whenever they're offered, because I know the audience enjoys them, and that that is one thing I do like about being an actor is an audience.
The only drawback I see, especially for Conor and TJ, though, after you've done a show, especially North Carolina stage, I think do you have any time 2 shows in a day this run? But even you do a show at night, how long is the show?
It's one act. It's 90 minutes.
Oh, I'm there.
It's intense, but it goes by like that.
No, it's so funny you said that. Because as I get older, I like shorter and one-act plays. Oh, I'm there now. Definitely 90 minutes. I'm there, baby. But that's funny because, but your boss, or not your boss, Charlie at NC Stage, told me you had a great line once. I was telling him once I didn't like one-actor plays. He said, no, that's not what to say. You don't like bad one-actor plays. So I guess that's 90-minute shows. I love 90-minute shows if they're good, but if they're bad, And same thing, a 3-hour show, if you see a good 3-hour show, it's good. But I guess the drawback kind of to being an actor is even after 90 minutes, you want to get out of there. You've done your thing, and it's about that time to go on. Let me talk a little bit, Candace, just as we wrap down here. In terms of, so the show, we're into as we're taping this, we finished 2 weeks, we have 2 weeks left. So the show runs what days and nights, Candace, if you would?
It runs Wednesday through Sunday, and every day except Sunday is 7:30 p.m. and Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m.
Okay. And one thing NC Stage, are they doing on this play too? If you can't get to it, they're doing it as you can do it screening?
Yes, you can go to the website, nc.org, ncstage.org,
Right.
and it'll give you directions on how to stream the play from the comfort of your own home. And I have to say, I've heard from people, friends of mine who've watched this, and they just loved it. They said you felt like you were there because you can hear the audience reaction, and there are camera angles. It's not just one shot far away from the actors. You actually get some different angles and of the people, the actors, so you really feel as though that you're actually seeing a play, not this setup camera and tiny little actors walking around.
Well,
So
and yeah, to NC Stage's credit, I did see at least one play during the pandemic, just the way you said it, and it was really cool. As contrast, I don't know if you guys have seen Zoom productions, but they don't do too much for me.
exactly, I had sort of given them up until this one, because they really, you just miss the live theater aspect of it. But this one seems to bring that in, which is really lovely.
And Conor, I guess in terms of coming back, so is this the first play you've been in for 2 years, or had you been in some other stuff in between?
So I was an understudy for my very first equity show at Olney Theater Center in Maryland. A great play, the Thanksgiving play. It's a newer play, so that was my first theater, like on stage with an audience show.
Did you get to perform also?
I did not.
Okay, yeah.
But I did go and see it many times, and it was wonderful being back in an audience and in a live theater setting. I had mostly pivoted to film during my time in COVID. So this is my first time back on stage.
Well, glad to see you. Same thing too, TJ. Had you done anything until this?
The first year of the pandemic, there was nothing. And then as things slowly started to open up, I got to do the play Art at Greenbrier Valley Theater in West Virginia.
I love it.
And I love the play. It's very similar to this. Candace and I have talked about it in terms of 3 separate viewpoints constantly battling. So yeah, I got to do that this past fall, and I'm going to get to go back there when this closes and do Little Shop of Horrors. So I've knock wood. It seems like we're starting to get back to some sense of live performance as a viable option.
And Candace, last question, same thing. Did you do anything in terms of acting or directing during the pandemic?
Yes, I did. We came back at the school I teach at, Warren Wilson College. We did a production of a play called Appropriate, or it could be called Appropriate. The playwright doesn't distinguish. And we did that in November. We had the audience sit in pods, and they were masked, so you had to make a reservation for however many people were in your party. And then the actors wore clear masks, so that you really couldn't even see them with the lights and everything.
Cool.
You couldn't even really tell that they had the masks on, and that worked really well. It was a play with only 7 characters, so we have a big stage, so we were able to do that play safely. And actually, my campus had no cases of COVID
Nice.
in that first semester. Yeah, we were lucky.
And moving forward, TJ, so you mentioned your upcoming play, so you're doing Little Shop of Horror, another great dramatic role, in terms of great dramatic theater.
Very similar.
Okay, yeah. Any other things in your upcoming plans?
No, I've got that following this, and that'll finish out the summer for me. And then we'll kind of see where we are. One of the hardest things, no matter what line of work you're in, but in the last 2 years, is not being able to make long-term plans. You're kind of looking towards the end of the day, towards the end of the week, to see what happens in the world. And so hopefully things will continue to improve as far as the opportunities for gathering together to tell stories. But I'm very lucky to be here. I think Conor and Jen, I'm speaking for her, would all agree that this is a lovely chance that we've been given, and we are very fortunate for being able to come together and tell this story.
And Jennifer, course, has been at NC Sage a bunch of times. She's just a tremendous local gift we have. Conor, same thing too. Any plans after this?
So I don't have any definite plans at the moment for acting, besides moving to Los Angeles in November. So I'm pursuing film acting at the end of this year. I have friends out there that I'm gonna bounce around on couches until I find a cheap place to rent.
Yeah, that's right there.
So
It's cheap. And in the meantime, I'll certainly be looking for some fact-checking opportunities for you to pick up a couple extra bucks doing.
I'd appreciate.
Okay. And Ken, the same thing too. What's next on your agenda?
My plan, I'm on the board of directors of Montford Park Players, so my plans are the summer season with Montford Park, and into the fall. I'll be back at school, and I right now am trying to figure out what plays we're going to do next year, and looking forward to that this is really over and that we'll be able to produce again. We went a year at school without being able to produce a show, and it was difficult.
Okay, and one more time, Candace, I'll let you give the highlights. So folks want to see the play, the name of the play, dates, and how to get tickets.
The name of the play is The Lifespan of a Fact. The dates are Wednesday through Saturday at 7:30 and Sunday at 2, and that will run from now until May 15th. And you can get tickets at ncstage.org.
And the great thing about
and streaming tickets.
Okay, and the great thing about theater too, it's a lovely little theater. Wherever you sit, you're going to have a great view. So do catch the show. And I thank the three of you for being my guests on the special Facebook Live edition of Blaine's World Show. I hope to see you. I'll try to get there in the next 2 weeks and actually see you in person. Thanks, guys.
We would love that. Thank you, Blaine.
Thanks, Blaine.
Great.
Thanks, Blaine. Take care.
Okay. Just turn this off here somewhere. Okay, I lost it. I'll just say goodbye to you all. See ya.